A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome back to our coverage of the 2022 Shooting Hunting Outdoor Trade Show. I'm joined today by our good friend Ryan Petty, who has been a frequent guest on Cam & Company. And Ryan is a relatively new, like 6 months or so, right? Relatively new federal firearms licensee, and he is making his first SHOT Show appearance. So as somebody who's been here for, well, I get to go home. I do get to go home every year, but I've gone to SHOT Show since 2004, and I wanted to get your experience and your perspective as, from someone seeing SHOT Show for the very first time and what this has been like for you. So first of all, let me just ask you a really open-ended question. I mean, what has your SHOT Show experience been like this year?
Well, it's been wonderful. So the chance to meet people in person, interact with some of the brands that I've known and loved for years, and be able to see them is really fantastic. I'm a veteran to these big trade shows. I attended CES for a number of years, so I'm used to that. I'm used to the sore feet, being tired, grumpy,
right,
and all of those things that go along with the trade show. But this has been a really great learning experience for me.
So did you have any goals or expectations or strategies? Okay, when I get on the ground, I want to do X, Y, and Z. By the time I leave, I want to have accomplished A, B, and C. Or did you just kind of go into this thinking, I'm just going to go and see what I find once I get there?
Well, a little bit of both. So I come from the software industry, and one of the things we focus on is trying to solve problems. What problem, if we can't answer what problem are we trying to solve, then we don't write software. So I'm approaching it with the lessons learned from that technology and software experience to my new venture in firearms retailing and manufacturing. So what problem am I trying to solve? So I came here looking for problems that may not have been solved by other retailers or other manufacturers. So I've been doing a little bit of that. But I'm also here just to build relationships and try to solve some other problems that I have right now as a new retailer. It's been tough to get inventory. It's been tough to get products to sell. I have customers interested in buying, but I can't give them the answers that they expect from me about when I can deliver their purchase.
So are you talking to other distributors? Are you talking to the manufacturers directly? I mean, how do you resolve that problem as a new FFL, as somebody who doesn't necessarily have those relationships that have been built up over time? Where have you turned to try to solve that problem?
Yeah, I mean, right now, as you probably know, right, everything's under allocation. So it's kind of first come, first serve. And since I'm new and my order volumes are low, I'm kind of the last one to get notified on an allocation. So what I've been trying to do is diversify my supplier relationships. I think that's a fact for most retailers that I've spoken to that have been here at the show, is that they used to have probably a primary and a secondary. Now there's 3, 4, 5 different relationships, and many of them are trying to get direct to manufacturer relationships. But that's tough because manufacturers would prefer to deal with a wholesaler and sell large quantities as opposed to 10 or 15 to a retailer. So that's a challenge, and so everybody's just trying to solve that. But for me, I think it's been diversifying my supplier, and just being able to have more suppliers.
As we're talking, I don't know that this is a solution, but have you thought about the idea of independent shops like yourself forming some sort of maybe like co-op for to combine your buying power so you can compete with some of the bigger stores in terms of volume? I don't know how practical that is, but maybe that's a way to help out the smaller shops and the independent mom and pop shops that are struggling, because I'll tell you, it's not just the new guys. It's the small guys. It's the small shops. My local gun store in Farmville, I think I talked about this on the show before, but I've got a buddy who works there, and they have ordered cases of 9mm ammunition, and they have received a box, because they're having to compete against every gun store in Richmond, every gun store in Lynchburg, up in the DC area. Like, even in just for a Virginia gun store, they're a rural gun shop. They don't have that kind of volume that some of the bigger stores have, and so everybody does get hurt Is that even an option though, to kind of pool your resources with other small indie shops where around where you are?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I learned today, or I learned at SHOT Show, that buy groups. The manufacturers told me, "Hey, look, why don't you join a buy group if you're having trouble with your wholesaler?" So I think there are options.
Okay.
The problem I think with most of those is that they are geographically based. And I think your thought about putting together a buy group for small retailers that may be geographically close together, but actually sell to different customers, probably a valid idea that could solve some problems for some of us, and we could buy in enough quantity that would be interesting for a manufacturer to sell to us, and we're not as concerned about the territorial issues because we're selling to just our local communities.
Right. Yeah. And what do you want to do with your business? You talk about you want to sell guns. You also said, are you interested in manufacturing firearms as well?
I am, and that was part of the sort of the innovation, sort of see what's going on out in the space. I mean, coming from the technology space, we're constantly focused on the new and innovating, right, and creating something new and solving some new problem. And so there's some interesting parallels between software and firearms, particularly, America's rifle, the AR-15, right? The AR-15 is designed to military specs, right? And those are like software APIs. When you write a piece of software, you want to talk to Google. You write software based on their API. Well, those mil specifications are essentially like an API. So how do you innovate in an environment where you've got, stringent, it's probably not the right exact word, but you've got a specification. How do you innovate around that? So I was here looking for opportunities to innovate around that platform, because I think that's an interesting platform, and I think there's some problems that aren't being solved yet by the firearms industry that could be solved. So with some technology and some innovation.
So is that the platform you then want to focus on when you start building your own? Are you going to be making ARs?
I think so. I think that's the bread and butter, so to speak, of what is popular and selling. I think I'm interested in competition shooting and long range shooting also. I've got the long range shooting bug. I need to get the equipment to make me better, right? So that's interesting to me too. But there's a lot of modularity and innovation going on in that area that I saw at SHOT Show. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean when you talk about modularity, we're talking about taking a striker fire pistol and actually having the ability to turn that into part of a modern sporting rifle, right? That becomes basically the receiver, the lower receiver of a modern sporting rifle. I mean, that's the type of modularity that is on display right now.
It is, and again, when you've got standards and everybody understands what those standards are, you can start to see innovations happen around these platforms. So that was one of the highlights of the SHOT Show that I saw, was that striker fired pistol being essentially an AR lower. And so very cool stuff.
Yeah, it really is very cool stuff. So, in terms of the ability for you to get your product out there to your customers, obviously that is a challenge not only for yourself, but I think for the vast majority. I think even the big players are feeling this pinch to some degree or another. And unfortunately, is what I have found is that. Particularly with the ammo companies, nobody really wants to go on the record and talk about the situation right now. I think because they don't have great news to report, they will tell you they're working 24/7, they're adding capacity where they can, but the demand is still sky high, which you have probably seen just as an FFL over the last 6 months. Like we're still in that mindset where we were, I think largely where we were 2 years ago, of when I go into the store, if there's ammo on the shelf, even if I don't need it, even if I've got plenty at home, I'm grabbing it because I don't know if it's going to be there the next time I show up. So if it's there, it's gone as soon as I walk out the door.
Yeah, and even if it's not the price you hoped it would be, you're buying it. And so I see myself doing that too. I think as long-term gun owners, I think we all wish the last 2 years hadn't happened, but it's one of those things where you don't want to be caught again. I didn't expect 2020 to turn out the way it did, and I remember sitting there. This is funny. I actually had a shopping cart, full of ammo, and I let it sit because we were moving to a new city, and I didn't buy in January. And then in March, when everything settled down, I went back to that retailer, and I realized I had left, a few thousand rounds in the cart, and the price was probably 3 times what it was in January or whatever. So it was. I don't think we, as firearms owners, I don't think we want to be caught in that position. So when you see ammo on the shelf, you take a few boxes home with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, it's human nature, but I think it also goes a long way towards explaining why 2 years later we are still in the midst of this ammo shortage around the country. So despite the challenges that you've had in the first 6 months of being an FFL, has it been worth it so far? Are you ready to move forward? You're not going to give up and say, I'm going to sell cars, or I'm going to do something else in the tech industry. You're going to stick with this for a while?
Yeah, I think this is important. This is there's a lot of things I do. This is important to me for a number of reasons. One is I think I can make a contribution. I think back to my first retail experience and how that went. It was very intimidating to buy a firearm. I think we as retailers, we can improve on that experience, especially with so many first-time gun buyers that don't know what they don't know. And how can we make that a better experience for them? One of the ways we can make a better experience is having inventory in the store, so that when they come in, they can pass their background check and take that gun home. That is probably not the experience for most of these first-time gun buyers this last year. They probably didn't realize the restrictions that they had voted for in previous years would come back to haunt them this year, but they also probably expected to be able to go buy something and go home with it that same day or a couple days later, and that's just not the case this year. So I think I want to focus on, can we improve the retail experience a bit? But this is important to me for other reasons. The tragedy that befell my family and the loss of our daughter. Our founders gave us a gift. They gave us a gift of the Second Amendment, the ability to protect ourselves and our loved ones. And I want to preserve that. I want to be part of preserving that. I won't be the only one that preserves that. I don't want to sound that sounded arrogant, but I want to be part of preserving that for my kids and for my grandkids. And so being here it's more than just a show. It's more than just a business. It's a mission. It's important that we pass this on, and this is the community that we do that.
Well, listen, I know that there are going to be people out there who know your story and are going to say, Ryan, I don't understand how you could want to be a gun dealer, based on what happened to your family. Have you actually had anybody ask that? Like, how can you do that? How can this be your mentality? Why aren't you out there trying to ban guns instead of trying to make them and sell them?
Almost every day, Cam. Somebody says that to me. At this point, I just chalk it up to them not really understanding what happened in Parkland. If you know, and I know you and I have had a number of conversations, the gun wasn't the issue. There were so many other issues. And when you look at every one of these school shooting cases, and for that matter, violence in society in general, it's not a firearms problem. It's a social problem. It's a social fabric problem. It's breakdown of the family. It's breakdown of community. And if we're going to solve those problems, it's not banning or restricting our rights and freedoms. That's not how we become safer. We become safer by strengthening our communities. So that's what I want people to understand about my story. And at this point, I just chalk it up to ignorance.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that, because my light reading, my bedtime reading this week at SHOT Show has been the book Mind Hunter by the founder of the Behavioral Sciences Unit of the FBI. And it was a Netflix series too, for 2 seasons for those who haven't watched it. But spoiler alert, at the end of the book, where he's sort of summing up, here's what I've learned in my 25 years as an FBI profiler. He said almost exactly what you said, that the answer to addressing violent crime lies beyond the law, that we can't expect police to solve to solve that problem. They can solve crimes, they can arrest bad guys, But he said, honestly, what we really need if we want to see less violent crime overall is we need to see more love. And that's what he was explicit in saying. We need to take better care of kids. We need to treat our neighbors better. We need to not tolerate the violence that we see. We need to, react as a community with love and say, well, this is intolerable. We're not going to accept it. But when you've got a law enforcement officer who has spent a career putting away some of the most violent individuals in society, and he says, you're not going to legislate your way out of this. You're not. You can hire as many police as you want, but that's not going to solve the problem. The problem goes deeper. I think we need to take that to heart. It is time that we take that to heart, and it would be great if superficial solutions could solve everything. But we know that it can't. And so I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I know that you must get tired of talking about it sometimes. But those folks in their ignorance, that can only be countered through education. It can only be solved or addressed by folks like yourself sharing your story. And so, again, thank you for doing everything that you do. Not just for our Second Amendment rights, but honestly to make sure that we do have a safer society, to make sure that parents and families don't have to go through the pain that your family has suffered.
Well, thank you, Cam. It's very nice. I don't want anybody to go through what we've had to go through. If we can strengthen families, strengthen communities, reach out to our neighbors. I can't wait for this pandemic thing to be over so we can get back and I would encourage everybody, once the masks come off and the mandates come off and all the other things that are going on, walk over to your neighbor's house, knock on the door, take them a pie,
right?
Do something, reintroduce yourselves and just reestablish those relationships, because at the end of the day, we depend on each other. We depend on each other for a lot of things, and that doesn't mean we can't and shouldn't be self-sufficient to the point that we can, and we should do all those things. But times when we need our neighbors, when the fence blows down or tragedy strikes or whatever. And so I hope that as a nation we will reawaken that sense of community and get to know our neighbors and reach out and be willing to have conversations. And again, when I use the term ignorance, I mean that not in a pejorative. I mean that literally, like they just don't understand. And so your point about education, just say, hey, look, maybe you don't understand what I've been through. Maybe you don't understand my point of view on this. Let me explain it to you. And I think the more of that we do, we strengthen our communities, strengthen our families primarily. I think that's the solution to a lot of this, is stronger families. Once we do those things, then I think we're a safer country, and we will have preserved the rights and freedoms that we've enjoyed for our future generations.
Ryan Petty, where can folks find the store? Where can folks find Solid Gunworks?
At solidgunworks.com. Right now you can go sign up for our email list, and we'll get back to you as soon as we find some inventory.
Well, listen, man, thank you for everything that you do. I'm so glad we got a chance to meet each other in person finally, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation throughout the year, man. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Cam.
All right, that is going to conclude this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I'm going to go hit the exhibition hall floor. I'm going to try to get as much other information and news stories as I can find. I will tell you the writing side of this is going to be a little challenging. I'm on a red-eye flight tonight. I'll be back on the ground in Virginia tomorrow. So the coverage of SHOT Show will continue for the next several days as I sit down and try to write up everything that I've seen and heard here in Las Vegas. But I do want to thank the folks at the National Shooting Sports Foundation. This has been a great event. It is so good to be back in person and getting a chance to spend some quality time with members of this industry, just catching up with old friends. So it has been it's been very good. It's been hard on the feet, but it's been good for the soul. And I hope that you've enjoyed our coverage. Don't forget to check out bearingarms.com throughout the weekend. We'll see you back here with another edition of Cam and Company on Monday. But until we talk again, be well, be safe, and be free.